Paul Fitts is really a huge name in our field, but it's not really very well understood or recognized. He was very interested in human factors, and he was in the Air Force, and he was very interested in a lot of the usability problems, we would call them these days, that pilots were having with all the different aircraft that were being used. So he was a human factors pioneer. He's also well known for something called fittss list, which I have to say I had never seen until I was researching this particular slide. It's actually a list of things that humans are good at and versus things that machines are good at. And of course, it's all pre-AI, so it's things like, machines are good at doing repetitive stuff, but nothing creative, and that's almost becoming reversed now. And finally, Fitts' law, which is the thing that we're going to look at now, because it really is still very applicable to modern designs and modern interaction, no matter what platform you're talking about. This, by the way, on the left-hand side, that is Paul Fitts. And the reason I've got this plane here and another arrow is that you'll see that what this says at the top of it is engineering psychology research. And that's what he did. He was looking into this whole field of making things work for people back before there were really any computers. This was in the 1940s. There were like 2 or 3 computers in the world at that stage. So he wrote this paper called Analysis of Factors Contributing to 460 quotes pilot error experiences in operating aircraft controls. And you can see the original if you use that QR code. And a quote from that paper is that it should be possible to eliminate a large proportion of so-called pilot error accidents by designing equipment in accordance with human requirements. So that's fantastic. That's exactly what we are saying to ourselves, I think, every day that we're in this business is, if only we designed it so that people could use it. That's what user experience is all about these days. But, this was back in the 1940s. 1947 is actually this particular paper, actually. This was his experiment, dated 1954, which I remember because we are the same age, Fitts' law and me. So it's a good year. And this was the whole thing. It was a tapping experiment. And you can see, knowing that his background was to do with aircraft controls, why he was interested, because he wanted to find out, how should we arrange cockpits, all these dials and levers and buttons and knobs. And he had people sit down and tapping between 2 targets, and he had parameters like target width and what he called target amplitude, which I think is just an unfortunate description. It's the distance between the targets. But happily for his participants, they knew which the targets were. We're actually in a slightly more complicated situation in a lot of our designs, because we've got users sitting in front of screens unclear in some cases about where they should be tapping, let alone how far apart or how big they were. But the outcome of his experiment, and we're still using this all the time, and we'll be using it in just a minute, was that this won't come as any surprise to you, I'm pretty sure. Bigger things are easier to hit. Bigger things that are closer together are even easier to hit than bigger things that are further away. But the one really important thing to say about all this is that it's in the direction of travel. So it does change according to which way the pointing device or the finger or the mouse or whatever is moving. So touch and click targets need to be obvious. And of course, that is true for both novice and expert users. You shouldn't be a surprise to expert users which things are touchable once they've been using the thing for a while, but it helps it to be obvious. Larger targets closer together are much quicker and less error prone, and that is a useful point for expert users, because they don't want to be tapping on the wrong things. They don't want to be spending extra time moving around the screen, either with a mouse or with their fingers. Direction of travel is important, so it depends on where people had been, where the size matters, in which direction the size is important of the targets. And like I was just saying, with touchscreens, be sure to test with older users, that you might be unpleasantly surprised at the success that they might have with sort of closely spaced touch targets, that kind of thing. It's certainly different.